writer at Variety. And thank you so
Thank you so much. Can you start on the left, please?
In the center, please.
Let's look on the right, everyone, like this is one of the great shot on the right.
Straight back to the middle, please, ladies. Little kiss with the camera.
Look in the middle. In the middle, everyone. Like this is one on the same direction.
And just here on the middle on the front.
And let's look on the left, please. Look everyone to the left. Stacy to the
Just
left.
in the middle on the front.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then ladies, can you just eye straight back to the middle for me, Claire, please?
There's much of it. Stacy, Cate, thank you. Coco, just you stay. Coco. To the two of you guys.
Just starting in the middle there. Cate, please.
You start on your left.
On your left, please.
Kate, back to the other left. You're right, please. This way, Anne.
Here, please.
I've been kissing the camera.
And just on the middle here, please.
Coco, you can have you. Come with me, Coco. Thank you. And just Cate.
Kate, please stand on your left. Left. Left.
In the center, please.
Kate,
In the middle.
Kate, please. Okay, can you start on the right, please? And just on the front right here. And then Kate, just eye straight. And Kate, just on the front here, please. Kate,
Kate, please.
good.
Head on the right. Yeah, this way.
Let's go to do the same.
I'm going to take a picture of my film camera.
Je change mes réglages. Est-ce que je peux changer mes réglages maintenant ou pas?
That's a great question. Yes, which seat am I going to? Which one? Me, this one? Okay, this seat. Oh no, I'm in that one. I'm not sure where Kate is. I'm sorry. Welcome to the 77th Cannes Film Festival. My name is Angelique Jackson, and I'm a senior entertainment writer at Variety. And thank you for joining us for this Caring Women in Motion talk. Our next guests are the co-founders of Proof of Concept. And please welcome, because we're going to give a warm round of applause in just a moment for Academy Award winner and Dirty Films partner, Cate Blanchett, Dirty Films partner, Coco Francini, and Dr. Stacy L. Smith, founder of the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative. Please welcome the co-founders of Proof of Concept.
Stacy's in the middle.
Please, everyone, give it.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Please welcome the co-founders of Proof of Concept, Cate Blanchett, Dr. Stacy Smith, and Coco Francini.
Guys, we have 45 seconds, please.
This is relaxing.
Just in front, please. And ladies, say just in front, please. Ladies on the right.
Kate, on your left.
And
Hey,
ladies.
in front of you, please.
And ladies on the right. Kate, one more down. Ladies on the right, please.
Kate, in front of you, please. Kate. And
Kate. On your left, please. Left again, please. And just in front. Kate, back your legs. Straight ahead, please. And just in front.
in front of, please.
Front row, please. Please, Kate, the last clear.
Thank you, photographers, and please turn off your mobiles for the rest. And also silence. Highly appreciated. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Queen of the sneakers.
Well, thank you to everyone for joining us. This is essentially the 1-year anniversary party
It's our
of Proof of Concept.
It's our anniversary.
Well, what is it like? We are bringing this full circle. Proof of Concept was actually born here during a Caring Women in Motion conversation. Tell us a little bit about that. Take us back to 2023.
A year ago, Coco and I were here in this forum, which is a wonderful forum, and thanks for having us again. And Stacy, Dr. Stacy was in the audience and came up immediately afterwards, and someone who couldn't be more engaged in women in film and in motion. And because our conversational gambit was that I'd name-checked the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, which of course Dr. Stacy heads up, in TAR, and so it went from there. And then Coco and Stacy have cooked up this amazing program, which Dirty Film's supporting.
Absolutely. Well, tell me about those early conversations.
Sure. I mean, after basically when you stood up and you asked a question at our panel last year, it was like you're a celebrity to us.
Yes, yes.
After the mention in TAR and also our work on Mrs. America, where we had all of our episodes directed by women, except for Ryan Fleck, who comes along with Anna Boden, and we love him. And we also used the inclusion writer. So when she stood up, we were like, oh my God, she's here. And the conversation that day was really about kind of how hard it is for women, trans and non-binary directors to get their start, find financing. And we started talking about it, and she was like, why don't you do something? You're complaining, why don't you do something? And so we came up with this, which we feel like is a really actionable step towards elevating those filmmakers.
And a year on, we're getting ready to announce the winners of the program. So it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, the big reveal's tomorrow.
Yeah.
A lot's
and
happened
within
in a
1
year.
year. And we can't thank Women in Motion enough. I know they've been doing this for 15 years, but the fruit of our labor with them partnering, tomorrow we'll see the dividends, right, of really what Caring has put in motion, giving us the forum to meet, and now hopefully transforming 11 folks behind the camera to move in their careers in a way that perhaps they wouldn't have without the resources that they're going to be awarded.
Well, Stacy, let's talk about that, because you just mentioned 11. 11 filmmakers are going to be selected for this program, but you had more than 1,200 applicants?
100%. A lot of folks were interested, over 167,000 interactions with our website. So there's an appetite. And what's really amazing is that if you look at the landscape of entertainment, the top 100 films over the last 16 years, right? Only 6% of directors, right? But if you go to independent, it's 58% are women. right? If you go to TV, it's about 40%. If you go to Netflix films, it's about 25%. But 6% of top grossing films are women. And we like to talk about the fiscal cliff, right?
I'm getting a tattoo.
Right. My most important accomplishment will be Cate Blanchett with a tattoo saying fiscal cliff that will get matching ones. But what's really important here is that when we put out the call, over 40%, actually over 50% of our submissions were from people of color, that were women, trans, and non-binary. 10% of the submissions, almost 10% were trans, and almost 10% were non-binary directors. So when companies or folks in the industry say it can't be done, we actually have data to say that there is a very, very interested talent pool. They will apply and they will lean into telling marketable stories to make an impact.
Well, Kate, since you're willing to get fiscal cliff tattooed on your body, would you mind sharing people what that means?
I think you do the best description of the fiscal cliff.
Absolutely. Yeah, the tier that goes along with it. So that drop in statistics really illuminates that there's a gendered marketplace for historically marginalized individuals when they try to move from one to multiple features. And for women, trans, and non-binary folks, it's a one and done. They get one at bat, right? And so this program, right, led by these artists to my right and left, I'm learning to be an artist through this experience, really is going to help change and shapeshift, I think, the top 100 films. In
So
a
they
very
get
short
access
amount of time.
to larger budgets. I mean, there is a real, what we identified is part of the problem is there's a failure of imagination. So you might have a small percentage of your cast, very small percentage of your cast being trans or non-binary in front of the camera. But what about behind the camera? And what about those people who are actually authoring the stories? So when we talk about diversity and, you know, breaking down the homogeneity of the types of stories that we get to see as audience members, but also make as cinema artists or working in television, you know, like it's got to be more dynamic. You know, there's so much talent there, and that's what we wanted to harness. And I think part of the program of proof of concept is that it's giving money to these recipients to make a short film, which can live in and of itself, but also sits as proof for those people who cannot imagine the worlds that they are trying to describe about what their feature would be. So it's a well-resourced document that is unassailably excellent, so and undeniably fundable for those organizations and institutions that they go in to try and pitch to.
And I'll add, I think that the thing that we're trying to address is that films directed by women, trans, and non-binary people are seen as risky. All films are risky, but these
Or
films
niche,
are seen as niche or risky. And what this does is it's an experimentation with a new model that we allow people to, you know, have something that they can say, look, I can do this. I can do this type of movie. I don't have to do a movie that's, you know, a small independent, you know, film that, you know, doesn't have a lot of commercial potential. So we just want to help build those artists up to be able to show that to the marketplace.
Well, Coco, I'm so glad you mentioned the word risky and the idea that, you know, female fronted and obviously also women behind the camera are also deemed risky. And I want to ask you specifically as a producer as well, that is kind of your job, is to find ways to eliminate risk. So how do you kind of balance in that paradox, and what are you sharing with these filmmakers to kind of help them along that way of navigating this idea of women's stories being risky?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're addressing it in several different ways. First, the financing, and this is kind of coming from the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative's research, that the three barriers they find is these directors don't have financing, they don't have exposure, and they don't have mentorship. So those are the three areas that the program focuses on. And I mean, it started with this incredible selection committee that we put together for the program, and we've only gotten yes when we've gone to filmmakers and said, can you help us? Would you talk to these filmmakers and give them some advice? I mean, it's really about creating that fellowship, and that's a word that kind of grew most out of the program and the feedback we were getting. And it's interesting because in a way this thing. Women in Motion is a fellowship that created this. So what we want to create for these filmmakers is like a real community and fellowship that's not only among them, among the emerging filmmakers, but also the really experienced ones like Greta Gerwig and Janixa and and Jane Campion and Lily Wachowski, all these people that are part of our selection committee.
But can I just talk about risk for a minute? Please. Because I think the industry, the more it embraces being risk averse, the more it's deemed to, being full of banal failures. And I think any time that I personally have advanced creatively in my career is when I have taken risks. And so it's just that a lot of our male counterparts in the industry are applauded for their risk and their bravery, and they're given $100 million more than, and all the actors, male actors, are taking incredible risks. It may not have worked, but God, that's interesting to see them do that. And I think, that we still talk about the female directors who are working with the big budgets, one of whom is heading up the jury this year. Yes. Bravo, 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 so great. But we don't give them the bigger budgets, and they have to. There's so much pressure then, if they succeed, as to what they do next. And I think it's really important in any creative life. It is not once you hit a peak, there will be a trough. That is part of it's what you do in that trough and the support you get in that trough to come and make something fresh and new. I mean, there's the Michael Bays of this world who do the same thing all the time and do it incredibly well, and that's where he likes to live. But not all artists do that, and I think it's the death of the industry if we don't take risks on anybody, let alone women, trans, and non-binary filmmakers.
Well, let's talk about that selection committee. We've mentioned a few names, but Lily Gladstone, Chloe Zhao, Emma Corrin, Eva Longoria, Greta Gerwig, Jane Campion, Janixa Bravo, Lily
Wachowski. We tried.
Yeah. Really, that was tough, I'm sure.
It's casual. It's casual.
What is it like to assemble so many people who have such varied experiences, such varied sensibilities, but also so much success in being risky and taking chances in so many different genres, so many different budget levels as well? I mean, this feels like the perfect people to evaluate these films, these 1,200 applicants, and to be able to see, what is there for these films.
Well, this is a bunch of women who are undeniably at the pinnacle of the industry, and incredibly talented and diversely so individuals. But they are also individuals who have really understand struggle. They really understand how difficult it is to have found the producers and the organizations who believe in them, and for them to keep developing in the way that they have as artists. So they are totally alive to the challenges that these filmmakers that we're talking about supporting will face. And I think it was really important to us to have a selection committee, because often you see a work that is perhaps about a subject matter that we don't normally see in mainstream cinema or on a mainstream platform, that someone will come on board to exec produce something. And it's like saying, I believe in this. I have a platform, I am a recognizable entity, I am behind this. And it really helps the filmmaker open doors for them. And so we felt by that selection committee, we'd get their perspective, which has been totally invaluable and really helpful in, as the program develops. But it's also, we get the imprimatur that they support the idea, And I think that that's the thing, is when you reach a certain point in the industry, we do understand how difficult it has been and continues to be. We talk about the pay gap, but we haven't got 2 hours to talk about that.
We can make 2 hours.
But I think it's really important that to give back and to mentor, and so by their involvement, there's a mentorship even in their involvement at this level.
I think it was really important to signal too to who we wanted to submit that we were serious, right? There are only 2 transgender directors across 1,600 movies.
Yeah.
One of them is on our selection committee, right?
And she reached out when she heard our announcement and asked to be a part of the program.
Absolutely.
So I think that these people are invigorated by what we're doing and want to support it. Continue, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, if we want Indigenous filmmakers, somebody like Lily Gladstone is incredibly important. Emma, We want non-binary creators. We need to let people know this is a place for community. This is a place for fellowship. This is a place to belong. And our numbers, I mean, with over 50% of submissions, people of color, I think we really communicated we want a variety of perspectives in this submission pool, and then our recipients reflect that submission pool in a way that I think is very thrilling, and we'll see novelty and imagination as a function of that. So it's really exciting.
Well, tell me a little bit about the recipients, because I know we can't, reveal who anybody is right now or what the films are, but something that stood out to me from the beginning of this program is it's not just for first-time filmmakers. It's part of the reason why we're discussing the fiscal cliff here is it is so difficult for people to make number 2 or number 3. So what did you see within the range of those applications, and then who you selected in terms of that?
I mean, a lot of the selections were made based on, like, does this need a proof of concept, and do we feel like this is going to help elevate these people in their career? So, we're looking for, we say, audaciously authored work. We want things that can only come from these artists and that really feel like they need the scaffolding of this group and the support of this group to make it happen. So, for us, our goal isn't just to make a short film, it's to create an ecosystem of change where these people can go on and make these larger scale projects. So every single person, it was so hard, and thank God we had the selection committee, because that allowed us to have a little perspective, because we wanted to give this, this support to every filmmaker that applied. And which is, why we're really excited about our 11, and we won't say much more. You'll see more when we release it, but a really wide array of genres and types of films, and coming from each of their unique gazes, but I think a little bit different and a little bit more broad than what's in the marketplace that you see kind of being directed by gender marginalized people.
Well, and I do this year in and year out. I could almost not write our top 100 grossing film study every year. It'll be the 18th time. With my eyes closed, I could guess at what the trends are almost. So to see these storylines, right? I'll say one that I won't. I'll obscure it a bit, but there's a animated short. Sure. Unbelievable.
Brilliant.
Unbelievable. Heist. Unbelievable. So this idea of imagination that Cate talks about, we see it in these storylines in such a compelling way, and it deviates so notably from what we see every year when we analyze. Gen Z is going to go crazy. These films will resonate with audiences of all ages, but in particular, that young demographic.
And we do have first-time filmmakers, but this, like you said, it's not built for them, because it's really built for people, and at all levels, who just say, I don't know how to take the next step. So we're trying to address that for people that maybe come from a world that's a little bit over here and are moving into feature filmmaking, or that have directed a bunch of episodic and moving to features, or have directed a film and it's been lauded internationally, but now they have to take this next step, like we were talking about with the peaks and the valleys. So we really want to put everyone in the position to succeed with their next project, no matter what their level is. It's just about moving up, bigger budgets, bigger scope.
Well, I would love to talk about the launch in a moment, but I love what you were just mentioning about the bigger scope, because it feels also as if women, people of color, really all marginalized folks, do seem to get pigeonholed into telling identity narratives. And it 100%. Seems as if these projects are going beyond that. And while it's important that we share our stories, it's also important that we get the opportunity to share a wide array of stories. Not just,
I just came from a forum with the EFTA, which is an organisation that supports emerging filmmakers, but in the Middle East and North African region predominantly, with a couple of refugee filmmakers. And the thing is, it's like, one was a woman who actually wants to, she missed the proof of concept deadline, so
next
year. Next
exactly.
But she was saying, it's really hard because I have 2 labels that I have to get to before I can get to filmmaker, and that's I'm female and I'm a refugee. So it's like you have to sort of, when can I just tell a story? And it was interesting, a lot of the submissions, say by trans or non-binary filmmakers, didn't speak directly to that experience, but because they have a lived experience, their point of view in whatever story, in whatever genre they tell, will be different from somebody who, you know, has grown up in white middle-class male. It's a different perspective. They'll put the camera in a different place in the room. And I think that's really exciting. That's when you see really different types of filmmaking, I think.
Yeah, that's truly the point. That is the point of all of this. Cate, I am curious for you as the actor on our panel, you know, what have the experiences been when you're working with a woman, a trans, a non-binary filmmaker? How have you seen that perspective shift and seeing that camera in another part of the room?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't worked with as many as I would have liked, you know. You know, I do the head count. I think I talked about that last year, you know, that I'm back in the same place, you know, working with men that I love, love working with and respect, but I'm walking on set and you know, if there's 50 people on set and there's 3 women. And it's like, when is this going to deeply, profoundly shift? You know, so I feel like it's Groundhog Day all the time. And I think that's where this feels like this space gets politicized. Because the more you talk about it, there seems to be, in the media, you know, in particular, there's a sense of, oh, haven't we discussed that? And it's like, I feel the same way. Like the amount of times that women are in press conferences, say at a festival like this, and they get asked about women's representation in film. And it's like, there are 2 men sitting on this panel. I would love you to ask them that question. Why do I always? Is it my problem? It's my reality. But why are you asking me to solve this? Do you know what I mean? And so we have to obviously mentor. It's super important. But the change it's slow, and it's also it's like 2 steps forwards, you know, 2 steps back sometimes. You know.
Yeah. And right now we're at 2010 levels, right? We shifted on screen in terms of women's representation, leading narratives. We're back to 2010. So a program like this is incredibly important to really be thinking about narratives that are needed. People need to be seen and heard. Compelling stories need to be told, and people need to have career sustainability and generational wealth, right? As women, trans and non-binary individuals. And that's not what we're seeing coming out of the legacy studios right now. So this is a nice countervailing influence.
And I think sorry to interrupt, something that Coco identified, which I thought was really interesting, having spoken to a lot of women who had been through, and trans and non-binary people who had been through programs, and you know, script development programs or mentorship programs, but there hadn't been they'd grown through the program, but then there were no opportunities there. You know.
Yeah, and I think that the push towards inclusion in film and television has been incredible. But I think that the next frontier is growing that, and also making sure that we don't get pigeonholed into just telling stories about our own identities. I mean, I think that that's where that fiscal cliff really comes into effect, is if you're making a story about something really niche and small and specific, you know, there's a ceiling to that. And I think if you can bring that gaze into stories that are more broadly commercial and bigger in scope and deal with genres that are, you know, wide-ranging, then that's where you solve this issue of these filmmakers not, you know, being able to bring home as much money. And that's really what we're, you know, yes, the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative is a wonderful nonprofit, but this is all built to kind of level the playing field financially for these people.
100%. And we have to pay a nod to Netflix, right?
Yes.
They generously
Absolutely.
gave the resources from their fund for creative equity. And what's great about working with Netflix is that we evaluate Netflix along with just about everyone else in the industry, and they're really leading in many ways. There's places where they need to improve, just like everyone else. But to go to a company that's been leading on screen and behind the camera, right? To have resources and the support, you know, we started with 8, and
we were going to pick 8 people, and we picked 11 people, and that was with Netflix giving us some additional support, because part of that is we ended up picking a few documentary filmmakers that we felt their projects were fabulous, and we felt like they needed their own unique fellowship as well. And Netflix has been nothing but supportive in every possible way for this program, and really exciting to work with.
Well, I just wanted to add a footnote because it is the whole purpose of this is once you have women, trans, and non-binary filmmakers behind the camera, it's a trickle-down effect. Everything becomes more representative. And Stacy mentioned that we're at 2010 numbers.
Yes.
So that then means that there were 30 movies with women and girls in co-leading roles. 30 out of 100 of those top-grossing films. Just, 1/3
Co-leading
amount.
roles.
Yeah.
And yes, co-leading roles. So that doesn't even mean
Single
the
lead, that's
lead.
right.
So to speak to that point of how much change this initiative looks to make, can you kind of encapsulate how broad this is by beginning from behind the camera?
Well, sure. If you have, let's talk about if you have a woman behind the camera. We can't say the same about trans and non-binary because there's not enough data
Correct.
to even make this argument. But if you have a woman behind the camera, you have more women leads. You have more women on screen and girls. You have more women behind the camera. You have more women over 40, which is good news for, I think, Cate and I. Right. And then you also have more women working behind the camera. So you're creating the ecosystem that Cate was just speaking about. We see that, right? And we also see that those films make just as much, if not more, money. It's not the leading character that drives financial performance. It's the executive support behind the films, right? Because films with women leads get less money, films with male leads get more money. When you hold the money constant, actually women and people of color overperform domestically and internationally. So we're excited to not only replicate that with women behind the camera, but with trans and non-binary directors as well. And I think that's what's really exciting because that's where we're at as a society, right? That's where we're at. If you go to campuses, you go to high schools, the types of stories that we have in this group of 11 really reflect the reality of the world that we now live in. And that, to me, is why I'm so excited about this opportunity, because it's going to resonate not only with the filmmakers, but with the audience.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad that we're able to kind of give like a larger context to this because we are in this time of kind of great contraction as an industry, and you all are building a new model. What is the challenge to basically doing those two things simultaneously?
Is it a contraction or is it an expansion? There seems to be, there's so many different ways to make films. It seems that because that is the case, it seems that there should be so many different faces and voices included in that diverse array that people are consuming filmed content.
I think, and what you're speaking to, like Cate and I have a project in the immersive competition. There's so many other mediums to play in, but in the traditional entertainment industry, I mean, you're going to see less of those kind of scale deals that get writers and directors started on their career. So this is really about how do we fill a gap to create new talent, and we feel like it's about the future of our entire business. We don't have ways to scaffold these talents at the beginning of their career. Like, where are we going to find the Greta Gerwigs in the future? So, the contraction, this is the natural life cycle of things in some respects, and there's other forms of media that are exciting to play in, but we want to be a part of the support system at the beginning of these careers.
Yeah, I mean, it feels really more important than ever to kind of bolster it now, because if you don't, then we do have more regression, and we can't afford that. Tell me a little bit about that idea of the launch, because this is not just a program that ends with the showcase. That is something that's very specific with the mentorship and how we, especially with women, trans, and non-binary people, making sure that people know how to pitch themselves in the room and show, what their vision is, and keep an eye on what it will look like when we get into distribution and marketing and things along those lines. Coco, what has been important for you to impart?
Yeah, I mean, like Cate was saying, I did kind of a deep dive on what these programs provide, and they're fantastic and they're necessary, especially in the United States where there's no public arts funding, So if you're at the beginning of your career, you're really scraping together pennies, maybe doing a crowdfunding campaign, before getting admitted to one of these programs. But you know, they're about making short film, and they're incredible support for that. But what you do next, how you navigate the industry, that's really the part that we're trying to address. The short film should come, you know, everyone in our program is so talented, we know they can make a great short film. But how do they package it? How do they take it to the next step? How do they actually turn it into a financially viable product? That's the area that we want to address really clearly. So after our showcase, there's going to be a whole kind of, I call them a module about addressing how you get into festivals, how you do your own marketing and publicity. I mean, this becomes a full-time job for filmmakers. At every level, as Cate can tell you. You really need to look holistically, and everyone needs to be producerial at this point in time. You know, you don't have the luxury of just being a director and working with the actors. You have to understand how to monetize the thing that you're doing. You have to understand how to get to your audience. And, you know, those are things that can be quite hard to understand if you're coming from kind of outside the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cate, what are those lessons that you've learned as you've become more producerial throughout your career that you wanted to impart?
Yeah, I think a lot of producers are great at getting money, but then they're not particularly good at understanding that there's not a cookie-cutter approach to development, that every filmmaker requires different things, and I think the level of what's traditionally be called creative producing is as equal, because the journey is long, and I think it's as Coco's referring to, I think it's getting a sense of how do you create an environment in the zeitgeist in order to drop these things. So you have to start thinking about that as you're developing it, you know, because those things sometimes take a year or two to put together. How can you start allowing an audience to be open to those ideas? So I think that sort of stuff's really important. It's not hand-holding with the filmmaker, because these are really robust filmmakers, but you know, they're about to make a leap there, and so that's very exposing for them. So I think it's making sure, and a lot of teams applied too. Like some of the directors came, you know, already with a producing partner and already with a DP and a production designer, and so that's great. They have an armature, but some of them did not, and so they can't all be developed in the same way. And that's what I've found in these conversations, is filmmakers often need quite different help in quite different, or support in quite different areas.
Yes.
I feel very powerful now. I don't know why I have this microphone. Came from over there. I think it's about really practical feedback and advice, because that's the thing that's going to, you know, allow you to succeed. You really need to think practically about how you're going to, you know, deal with all these elements that are, you know, not the art. And, you know, we know there are so many people there deserving just based on their ability as an artist, but it's about all the other elements that come into play when you're trying to find success.
And I think trust is hugely important. Yeah. I think, you know, of course, no matter what your gender or sexual orientation is, this industry is rife with rejection. That just goes with the territory. But we're talking about people who have been rejected in profound, you know, base levels, forget themselves as cinema artists. And so they, you know, it's earning their trust to say that you want to help them make the best film possible, but you need to have robust discussions to, you know, because the best producers are able to push back and say, I think you're compromising here, or I think you don't need that there, and so making sure they have those partners throughout the process.
What was the best piece of advice that the two of you were ever given as you started on this journey as producers?
Oh, God.
I think, I don't know if it's a piece of advice, but I think you have to be willing to do everything from, like, getting someone a coffee to making a distribution deal.
Yeah.
And the best producers are Swiss Army knives. You know, and I think that's, you know, you have to just be able to look holistically at a project and figure out what it needs. And if you don't know, you have to be willing to learn.
Yeah.
I think I just got the best piece of it. Be a Swiss Army knife as a producer. Just don't stab anyone in the back with it.
Exactly. You keep it sharp, but not use it for good, not evil. When you think about the future of this initiative, of this accelerator, what are you most excited about, knowing just, again, how far you've come in only a year? This is honestly quite remarkable to have met here in Cannes last year, already have finalists selected, and be preparing to, send them out into the world. I feel like it usually does take longer than that. I might be wrong, but I feel like it usually does.
We have a tendency to work quickly. I mean, we were selling a film here in 2022, and it was done by 2023 Cannes, our film Fingernails that Cate and I produced. I think, it's just about, I mean, we kind of say it's so fun to make dreams come true, to get the responses to people when we've chosen them, and to feel like we're going to make a meaningful impact. I mean, that's everything. So I hope by next year the films will be done, and I hope they'll all be on their own journeys and ready to scale up and make their long-form projects.
And look, I mean, while we're here, we may as well say it, that festivals are extraordinary platforms, in an unstable time in the industry. And how amazing if one of these films got realized and ended up at a festival like Cannes. That would be a dream.
And imagine, it's 11 people, right? 11 people. Each of those filmmakers turn this into a feature, and let's say they work with 100. And then those 100 people go on and work on another project that they've never worked in that capacity. At a very short amount of time, you're amortizing an entire groundswell of people that would have never had the opportunity, but it started with 11, right? And exponentially, that's how you create change. The Amber Inclusion Initiative started with 12. Now we are hundreds, and from what I understand, there's a student, one of my former students is in this room somewhere. But it's that idea, we're bringing hope where doors closed. Our filmmakers will carry that hope, amortize it across so many different individuals, and they'll hire people like them and give them opportunities that perhaps they weren't going to receive. And so in a very short amount of time, we metastasize goodness and employment. And when somebody comes back and says, my whole life changed because of proof of concept. I get those stories all the time as an educator, right? As an academic, we hear this all the time. But to be able to see that with this program, I can't wait. And I'm not getting any younger, so it's got to come fast. It's got to come really fast because I'm impatient for change.
An economy of change. That's what we call it. It's about creating an economy of change, creating opportunities, empowering the people that we bring in to create opportunities for others, and working with other organizations doing the same.
Sure. Let's talk about that idea of allyship real quick, because I wanted to go back to the point that you made, Cate, about, we ask the women how you can make it better, but we never look to the left and right at the men. So how can people be more supportive in general of the fight towards representation, but also of this accelerator, of this initiative as well?
You talking about blokes?
Yes, yes, I'm talking about the men in this room and beyond.
Oh, look, I think it is really, it benefits everybody. An inclusive, diverse set is a far more interesting set to be on. Suddenly you find different jokes are told, different risks are taken in front of the camera and behind. What you get from a visual perspective is entirely different. I think it's making sure that the creative individuals and their representatives are alive to that, But I think still, we're still struggling with the equal pay for equal work.
Sure.
Quadrant of this discussion. So I think we've still got to keep plugging away at that, because in a kind of a capitalist economy, what you're paid is what you're perceived to be worth. So that's still a huge thing for me. But that's obviously not what we're talking about. We're talking about bigger budgets.
Yeah, and I think allies write checks.
Yeah.
The CEOs can write checks, right? Brands can write checks. They can support these filmmakers, their marketing distribution, right? Like what they need to get out there. There's a lot of practical support that can be given by simply writing a check, right? And that's really important. Second, it's catching language, right? We often talk about muscular directors. Why in the hell are we calling them muscular? Do they pick up heavy objects on set? I don't see that is not what a film director does.
Coffee
But the
cups
sec-
are heavy.
Very heavy. But the second we move to muscular language, we then now are masculine, we think director, we think male. In particular, we think white male. And so it's catching that language and saying, oh, I'm uncomfortable. And if I'm uncomfortable, I must be making a good choice. Because it's when I am comfortable, I hire the person that's like me.
Sure.
We want people to be uncomfortable, experience cognitive dissonance, and understand that that means you might actually be onto something. And write a check. Because the more people can write checks for support of these filmmakers, right, the more they get to actualize their dreams. So resources and understanding your own biases, many of them in the entertainment industry are explicit. They are not implicit. They are things people say out loud that reinforce a patriarchy that's far too problematic and has lasted far too long.
And I think when they're putting a project together, as we did with Mrs. America, you know, just say, look, as an exercise, let's just write a list of 20 female, trans, and non-binary directors, you know, or actors, or wherever you're at in the process, just see what we come up with. And it will be far easier than you think. And when you look at bother to look at their films, then you get a far more interesting and innovative approach to the thing that you're making. It's so much easier than we tell ourselves it is. But you know, change is, doing things differently is terrifying. And I do think if you're not slightly terrified when you're making a movie, you're an idiot. Because, I mean, you have to be outside your comfort zone every time you work. Otherwise, you have to risk failure. You have to, otherwise you don't push through to something fresh. And you just get the same old, you know. I'm not into content. I mean, I'm filling holes in someone else's content. I don't know, I'm not technical, I don't know what it is. I'm interested in making things that are interesting. Yeah.
Well, Coco, bring us home.
Come on, Mama.
Bring it home. I mean, I think that I'll just say, echoing everything that these two of them said so eloquently, but we're coming for you, men, and I don't mean that in terms of your money. I mean, we need men to support this program. We need men to be mentors in this program because men are the ones that hold the keys to getting these films made for the most part. And they're the people that have more experience working at these budget levels. I mean, that's just the truth. So we all need to come together to create this change. This isn't gonna be an ecosystem solely of gender marginalized people. Men need to enter this and lift everyone up as well. So we're coming for you.
But also for them to see the benefit, you know, like it's not an attack. It's just, you know, it really is an incredible opportunity, I think.
Well, we look forward to having this as just like our yearly summit, checking on proof of concept. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another Caring Women in Motion talk.
Thanks, and thanks for bringing us together.
Thank you.
And for more information, please go to POCaccelerator.org.